All right, welcome back to another episode of the podcast and the season 1 finale. Today we are talking with Paul. He's with the Ghostbusters in Ireland. How are you, sir? Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
So I'm Paul Higginson with Ghostbusters Ireland. The group was formed just over 4 years ago. There's a few other members started it before I joined. There was Stuart, John, and Damien. They bought stuff off each other, Ghostbusters themed. They got chatting, and Steve joined just after that. And then just chatting Ghostbusters online with some guys. I met another fella, Alan Coates, and him and I joined Ghostbusters Ireland, and at that point the group was fully formed. The guys guided me through building my first proton pack, which was a Ben of Kent pack, and since then we've just gone from strength to strength. We've attended many cons up and down the country. We were at the Ghostbusters Afterlife premiere in Dublin on Halloween of last year, which was a fantastic event. We have our Ghostbusters Ireland Facebook page, and I try to make weekly webcast videos on it, just sort of reviewing items or updating everybody on the Ghostbusters news that's happening. And we've also got a Junior Ghostbusters Ireland group, which is now starting. So we've got junior members, and we're getting certificates and little membership packs out to those guys. And even at Dublin Comic Con 2 weeks ago, we had kids coming up to us dressed as Ghostbusters, and this is what amazes me. This film is 38 years old, and there are kids still dressing up as these 4 classic characters. We are part of a franchise that is alive and well and thriving, and I love it. I love every minute of it.
Well, how long it's been and how it's still thriving.
It's amazing. It really is. And when Afterlife came out, I said to my parents, I said, this is the film I've been waiting for since 1989. Following on from Ghostbusters 2. Like, my parents are the reason I am a Ghostbuster, because they got me started on it when I was a young child. And I kind of feel like it's gone full circle, and a little bit of my life, a chapter is closed there. Now I've seen what I see to be the sequel to Ghostbusters 2. It's brilliant. But in the same way, circle of life, kids are getting in to Ghostbusters now, seeing Afterlife, and with a whole new range of toys. Ghostbusters is here.
I couldn't agree more, and with in regards to the new generation, it's great that they're doing that.
Yeah, it is. It's just an excuse for me to buy
right
as well.
There's definitely nothing wrong with collecting a bunch of movie memorabilia and the new stuff that they come out with. And I think that at some point Kenner actually re-released some of the older figures, didn't they?
They did indeed. They re-released the original 4 Ghostbusters, or 4 real Ghostbusters figures, and the Kenner Ecto got re-released as well, and also the Ghost Popper, which shot out little foam blocks.
That is so cool. So I'm always curious, in talking to the other franchises near me, what was your first interaction with the film? Was it the first or the second, or?
It was the first film. So I remember it so well watching the original Ghostbusters cartoon, the real Ghostbusters. That was my cartoon when I was a kid. I would have watched it on TV. My parents would have got me videos out of the video library to watch the weekends when I was at my grandparents' house when they were working. And then they must have thought, I know, we'll let Paul watch the film of it. And I remember watching that, and when it got to the end of that film, rewinding it back and watching it again from the start. And here I was watching basically the Ghostbusters origin story, where they came from, that first hunt with the ghost in the library. And I was amazed to see the Ghostbusters wearing normal clothes and not their coloured flight suits. And then it just sort of went from there. And I remember I watched it solid that weekend, and my dad took it back to the video library, and I was like, I need to see that film again. And then I remember Ghostbusters 2 coming out and getting stickers from Ghostbusters 2, thinking, when can I get to see this? And as soon as it was out on video, Mum and Dad got that out, we watched it, and yeah, the love the love was still there for it.
It's great, yeah. And I was talking to somebody last night about that, the real Ghostbusters, and as weird as it sounds, I barely remember that, and I'm planning on rewatching all those.
Yeah, it's worth watching. Like, I regularly watch them now with my young children. My children are 5 and 7, and even watching as an adult, the stories really hold up, and there's some really dark stories in there, right? Scary stories about vampires and werewolves, for example, and I think those stories really hold up to today. You know, there was a really good writer, J. Michael Straczynski, who's wrote a lot of other stuff like Babylon 5, and any of his stories he wrote for the real Ghostbusters are fantastic, totally worth watching. So that's the first 2 seasons before it went out for syndication. He worked on it, and that's the strong episodes.
Definitely, and he's done a lot of great work, and to see him do that was amazing.
Yeah.
So, what did you think of the 2016 version?
Ah, here we go. Yes, the 2016 version, it had to get, it always gets mentioned to me. So, here we are, say, early 2016, thinking here's a new Ghostbusters film coming out. Now, the love for Ghostbusters has always been there for me. We had the game that came out in 2009. I remember taking a couple of days off work when that came out just so I could play it through. And then along comes the film. Now, we saw a lot of promotional material for it. We had the Ghost Heads documentary that sort of followed the release of that with a few people and Paul Feig. Um, it was hated before it came out, which I don't think was right. You should never judge a book by its cover. I've no issue with the 2016 film. I do have issues with people giving it stick unnecessarily, such as before it came out. But I feel that it suffered from bad writing. That was its big problem. I mean, there's lots of good ingredients in that film, and the 4 actresses that played the Ghostbusters and Paul Feig, you know, they've produced some very good stuff. Saturday Night Live, Bridesmaids, Spy, some very, very good things in there. But I don't know if it was the chemistry with them and the writing. It just, basically the bad guy was an incel, which is involuntary celibate, which they're saying is like a new terrorism. Not really a demigod or anything like that, like Gozer was. The bad writing let it down, and it got a lot of bad press and a lot of hatred. In its own right, it's a good film. If my kids asked to watch it, I would let them watch it and make their own judgment about it. And whether you hate it or like it, it's part of our franchise. It's like Star Wars Episode 1. A lot of people hate on that, but whether you hate it or like it, it's part of the franchise
Yeah,
now.
and I couldn't agree more. I think that everybody who was in it is super talented. And I couldn't agree more that the writing was the big hindrance. If the script would have been better,
Yes.
the movie definitely would have been a lot better. But I can respect where he came from when he made the movie. He wanted to make it what he wanted, and he did
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And Paul Feig is a very talented director. He's Bridesmaids, Spy, and a lot of episodes in the American Office. So, you know, he's a good guy, and he's well respected and all, so no issues there.
So, in regards to Afterlife, I felt like it was a tearjerker. Then that's just me, and the way that they did the Harold Ramis tribute at the end was just fantastic.
Yeah, it was totally. I mean, the other guys in Ghostbusters Ireland, they were taking bets behind my back how long it would be before I cried at the film. So they call me the ultimate fanboy. You know, I live and breathe Ghostbusters every day. They were taking bets on how long it would take me to cry, and yeah, it's just when you see that hand coming onto the thrower, and there he is. Egon is guiding her and supporting her, and he's been there all the way through the film. Just we couldn't see him. That's and the music was done so well with it. It was like a very light version of the Ghostbusters theme by Elmer Bernstein, and then it sort of piped up and became very heroic as the other Ghostbusters got back on their feet and got their throwers onto Gozer as well. It was a total tearjerker, and the bit that really got me was just as Egon dissipated and moved into the ether, and we saw the For Harold on the screen. That's the bit. It still gets me now watching it. It really, even now I can feel myself tearing up a bit just thinking about it and getting goosebumps. It was done perfectly, I thought. There was no speech out of him. We didn't need him to speak. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree
Masterpiece.
more. And I felt like not knowing that they were going to do that going in, I felt like they were going to do it in some form. Just wasn't really sure of how they were going to do it. And
Yep.
then, you know, listening to some of the interviews that Jason Reitman did, you really couldn't do another Ghostbusters movie without including him in some way.
It closes off Egon's chapter in the Ghostbusters
Yeah,
story.
exactly. So, another question that is kind of a loaded question, but I ask every franchise that I've talked to is, who is your favorite Ghostbuster or favorite
Okay.
Ghostbusters?
Race dance every time. Um, I can see myself in Ray. The enthusiasm for it. It's almost like a childhood innocence or childlike innocence. Just the way he's going into every situation. Like, are you a god? Yes, no. You know, um, Ray dance definitely, and he's nerdy without being nerdy like Egon. He's completely different from Egon. There's the enthusiasm for it there. Like when he says to Peter, "Don't forget, Peter, I was present at an undersea mass sponge migration." He puts his heart and soul into whatever he's doing. Um, the other guys say, "Yeah, I am the heart of Ghostbusters Ireland." So definitely Ray Stance is
Yeah,
me.
and when you look back at the origins of the 1984 version, it's crazy to see how they've got four different personalities that seem to almost become like a team. I mean, everybody brings something different to the table.
Yep. Yeah, we can really see that in the original Ghostbusters. I mean, Peter is very much he's the front man. He's the spokesperson and the voice. Egon is part of the brains that develop the hardware. I mean, we see with Peter when they finish the bust in the Sedgwick and they're speaking to Michael Ensign's character, and Egon's putting his fingers up to his face to say how much to charge for each component of the bust. Peter's not afraid to put himself out there and speak. Winston, like, he's on a different level from the Ghostbusters, but in a good way. He's got street smarts. He knows what it's about. Like, whenever they're driving across, just before they drive across the bridge, and Winston says to Ray about maybe we've been so busy lately because the dead have been rising from the grave. It's a different level of smartness, but everybody in the team brings something different to it, and that's why those original four Ghostbusters work so
Yeah,
well together.
exactly. And I think that Jason did a very, very well job on bringing that in to the new generation, introducing Phoebe and
Yes.
podcast and the rest of the children that were in the movie. Because for me,
Yeah.
podcast actually, his personality is just like Ray,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
think that was a nice
Totally
touch.
is. I actually think Podcast is my favorite character from Afterlife because he just loves what he's doing. Like when they've been arrested, he's sitting there just smiling in prison, and they're like, "Why are you so happy?" He goes, "I'm in prison, or I'm in jail." And he ripped off the Spengler name badge off the suit he was wearing and wrote Podcast on with a marker. I love that. And his whole mystical tales of the unknown. And then it turns out that Ray Stance was his only guest. I love that. Or not his only guest, his
Right?
only subscriber. He goes, "You're my subscriber." I
And
love
I
that. Yeah.
think the small Easter eggs that they had in Afterlife was something else that was you have to watch it multiple times, which of course I have. I'm guilty of that. But there's
Yeah.
still stuff that I see that I didn't know was actually there.
Okay. Right. What if you
So
What
I
have you
had
noticed?
somebody on one of the other episodes that we did that told me about the license plate, and then in the I guess the barn, and then down in his I guess it would be the basement or his laboratory. you see some of the old equipment
Yeah.
that he had when they left the college in '84.
Yes, there's the red stand that got pushed out whenever Dean Edgar was kicking them off
Isn't that
campus.
crazy?
Yes. It's brilliant. It really was written for the fans, for the original fans. I mean, it's a great film in its own right. You can go and watch it and enjoy it. It's just an action comedy. But for the fans, there's so many more levels to it. You know, it's nice to see. Yeah. And the old music score, I loved how they reused the Elmer Bernstein score for a lot of it. Because that's what I loved about the 2009 game. It really made it feel like another film, another adventure with the Ghostbusters. And then to have that same music coming back into it, that was amazing.
Yeah,
That
and
really
and the
was.
fact that, and I didn't notice this until I talked to somebody, but they were saying that all the other proton packs that show up, they were pretty weathered and beat up, but Egon's was still pristine.
Yeah, I know. He was the inventor of that equipment. Really, it was him and Ray would have been the builders of it, I guess. I just loved it, and just the reuse of technology, using 50 odd traps to trap a god, basically, as she came onto your land. I loved it. That's one of the things I love about Ghostbusters is the mythology behind it, and the fact that you're dealing with beings from other dimensions or other worlds in this case, and like just four normal guys dealing with it. I love that. And the whole startup sequence when Phoebe started that proton pack up. Now this is a criticism of the 2016 film. Whenever Melissa McCarthy starts up the proton pack in the alleyway and it's throwing her about all over the place, oh, it's funny, it's hilarious, and all, she can't handle the proton pack. When Phoebe starts up the pack after repairing the CRT emitter in it, and just the sound of that pack starting up and getting back up, the cyclotron getting up to speed after not being started for so long, and then obliterating the bottles that are on the old tractor ahead of her. It's completely different films in that case, And people were saying, oh, it's just going to be Stranger Things, it's going to be Stranger Things, just remade, but as Ghostbusters. It really wasn't. I mean, Phoebe was a very capable lead in this film, or McKenna Grace was a very capable lead, and Logan Kim as podcast, they were two fantastic characters in this. I might have actually gone off on a bit of a tangent there,
No, that's
so
quite all
I'm
right.
sorry.
I like when people do that because I learn stuff that I wouldn't have normally known, and I would agree that the way the proton pack started up in Afterlife, it was more of a of its own character, so to speak. It was more predominant than it was
Yes. Yeah.
prior. But I think a lot of that has to do with the technology and how we've advanced since the very first.
Yeah. hmm And the whole way as well that Phoebe opened the proton pack and she was able to uh, repair it under her grandfather's ghost's guidance. I love that. And the fact that Hasbro are releasing that pack next year that you can strip down like that.
Yeah, and speaking of him guiding her while she was fixing that, I loved how she made the comment, "How did you make the cyclotron so small?" And then he turned the light to the
Yeah.
wall with all the PhDs.
Yeah, I know. It's brilliant. And the fact that she wasn't freaked out as well. She's a very scientific person, much as Egon was.
Yeah,
You know,
and it's
you can really see the
oh
side of
no,
the
no, I
kids.
agree,
Sorry,
I
yes.
agree. Yeah, because it was just like she knew he was there the entire time.
Yeah, he was helping her and he was guiding her, and yeah, before they moved out to Somerville, she didn't know who she was. She was a wee bit lost, and that so she really found herself
Exactly,
there.
yeah. So, and something else I've been asking people, and of course they're coming out with the new was it Spirits Unleashed game. But
Yes.
I'm curious because when I guess people at the time considered it Ghostbusters 3 just in the video game. What did you think of that game as a
Mm-hmm.
whole?
Oh, that game. that game was amazing. Like I'm still playing it. Actually, my 5-year-old son, as I come out to my study to do this, he's playing his way through the Alhambra ballroom scene where he's trying to bust Slimer. So, that game for me, that was what I needed back in 2009. Ghostbusters, the love for it was always there, but it reinvigorated the love. And that first opening scene, when the game loads and you see the security guard getting freaked out in the museum as the psi energy pulse moves through the place and just basically stirs the hornet's nest, and then we hear the Ghostbusters music. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. That was amazing. At that point, the game had me, and then of course you're going straight into the firehouse. You're getting a proton pack on. You're hunting Slimer and the Slob Ghost in the sub basement. It's a fantastic story. It's well written. It's brilliant. It really was, and it cleared up a lot of little bits and pieces. About why Stay Puft was Stay Puft and couldn't change. One destructor form per god per dimension. Things like that. The symmetry of that. Yes, it was good that you didn't get to play as the original Ghostbusters. You're playing as the rookie, because that could be anybody in that situation. It just worked so well, and the evolution of the equipment with the slime blower built into the pack, the stasis stream, the shock blaster, the meson collider. There's guys out there who've built very, very good video game proton packs, and I'd like to do one myself, I think, if I get the time. But that game, it really relied heavily on the Bernstein score, and when you're in the Sedgwick and you're going down the corridors, the PK meter out, I was right there in the Sedgwick in 1984 in my head. I was part of that. It got remastered, and it deserved it. It was good that it got remastered and released on the PS.
Yeah, and when it came out, of course, nobody could foresee what was going to come in the years to go, but it felt like they were hinting if they were going to do another, which, now we know, but it felt like they were saying, we're going to pass the proton pack to the next generation. And that was great.
Definitely. Yeah, our Ghostbusters, they are pensioners now. They are, I hate to say it, older gentlemen. As Winston said in the film, in Afterlife, I don't remember this job hurting so much. We need to have new Ghostbusters coming through, and that's where I think Extreme Ghostbusters really came into its own. The other Ghostbusters had left the business and gone about other career paths, and Egon just stayed. That's where Extreme Ghostbusters was really good. It came I think around about 1996 or 1997. And it was very good, and again some very dark and very well written episodes. And then for Egon's 40th birthday, we had the original guys return, original voice actors. What was it, the episode Back in the Saddle, I think it was called, the last 2 episodes of it, so Extreme Ghostbusters showed that people were open to the concept of other.
Yeah, exactly. And going into the new game that's coming, I think it's coming out in the November-December timeframe. What do you think of that, just watching the trailer for it?
I think it's brilliant because we haven't actually had a proper first-person Ghostbusting game. And a really good feature is there's the online capability, because I believe the PS3 version of the Ghostbusters video game, the servers aren't online for it anymore, so you can't play that. And that was never ported across to the remastered game because they didn't have the original code to go back to and rework. So I think being able to bust ghosts with the rest of your team, that is going to be good. But a really good feature, I think, is actually being a ghost in it. So you can have, I think you're going to have a lot of fun, and it's going to open up a whole new world of physics and what you can do in these games.
Yeah, and I think it'll give you more insight on the minds behind, the Ghostbusters franchise and Ghost Corps and, and it's going to be a huge success. Right now, I know over here it's all over the place on Facebook. It's all over YouTube. So it's going to take off, I think, especially since Afterlife was such a success.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely was.
with in regards to the original cast members that are still around, um, you were touching that, of course they're a bit older than they used to be, but when you look at them, you kind of see not really how badly they age, but they're starting to show their age quite a bit, with the exception of or not Egon, Winston or Ernie Hudson.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's nuts to see how long it's been, and you watch just even the 2016 version, and then you look at them now and you go, golly, our heroes are getting older.
yeah, yeah. And sadly, it's a fact of life. We're all getting older. You know, like I've been a Ghostbuster with Ghostbusters Ireland for about 4 years now, and I look back at photographs when I first joined at my first event, and I'm thinking, wow, I looked young and I looked good. You know, and I mean, I don't look old now. I just look a little bit older than what I did when I
Right.
first started all this.
So,
Yeah.
jumping into your all's franchise, what kind of stuff
hmm
do you guys do?
Well, because of the pandemic, we hadn't been doing any sort of face-to-face events. There's been the odd sort of birthday party, meet and greet happening here and there. At the start of the pandemic, I started doing weekly webcasts on our Ghostbusters Ireland Facebook page, just reviewing different Ghostbusters items and books and talking about different Ghostbusters stuff, and then showing real Ghostbusters cartoons as well. But now that the world is opening up again, we are getting back out to conventions. So 2 weeks ago, we were at Dublin Comic Con. It was a 2 day event, and I must say there was some buzz about it. It was fantastic. It was so good getting out. We were meeting people who've been following our Facebook page. They've been watching our videos, messaging us. It was nice to meet so many people face to face again. And of course, kids that were dressed as Ghostbusters. They were absolutely blown away meeting us and seeing all of our equipment and that. And I'm going somewhere with this. Where was it? Yes, we do a bit of charity work as well. So there's a charity in Ireland called Heart Children Ireland, and what they do is they support families of children with heart defects, so children that are maybe born with a hole in their heart requiring surgery, requiring modifications to their house to accommodate any disabilities they may have. So we do a bit of fundraising for those guys as well, raising awareness. And there's some of their kids are big Ghostbusters fans. So we done an event where we got to meet some of those kids, and they were absolutely blown away. And then at Dublin Comic Con, there was a teenager come up to us and said, "Hey, yeah, I'm one of their kids. Heart Children Ireland helped me." And it really just sort of hit home that you know some of these kids aren't going to make it, and they want to try and do everything they can for them. And to have this guy come up to us and say, "Yeah, they helped me," and shake all of our hands and put some money into our donation bucket, it really just sort of hit home, that what we're doing, it's having a good effect out there. And yeah, they've got some little Ghostbusters Ireland members as well. So yeah, that's really what we're
That's
trying to do
amazing, and
itself.
it's always inspiring to hear that there are people out there doing good in their communities, or at least trying to make somebody's day, no matter how brief that is.
Yeah. And we had parents messaging us after Dublin Comic Con, basically saying the kids loved it. They're absolutely star struck. One of the kids told their parents that it was the best day of their life meeting Ghostbusters Ireland. It's I attended a birthday party in October last year for a young chap. I think he was turning 6 or 7, and he had autism, and he wasn't really vocal. But me and him communicated. There was no problem there. He was blown away by having a Ghostbuster at his birthday party and seeing all the equipment. And it can be very humbling, these events, because the little boy's father said to me afterwards, that's the most vocal he has seen his son in months. You know, how are you supposed to feel after something like that
Yeah,
happens to you?
it's crazy.
It's. I'm just, I said to him I was glad of the opportunity to do that and make a difference, and the wee boy has photographs printed from his birthday party up on his bedroom wall now, and just that's what I think being a hero is about. Being like that for a child, and just them seeing you like that and getting such a buzz out of it. That's not why I do it. I do it because I love being a Ghostbuster. But that's one little part of it. And I come with my kids who are both happy and healthy and no problems. And I think the world can be a cruel place sometimes. It's very humbling. Is the only word I can think to
Yeah,
describe it.
and being a kid, if you see, let's just say, Ghostbusters for, you watch the movie and then you meet somebody who's dressed as a Ghostbuster, you go, well, they're real. And of course, then
Yeah,
they find something to attach to, and it makes them happy. I can only imagine what being a sick child and meeting somebody that you've watched on TV in person, and it's got to be an amazing feeling. And it's you're right. The world can be very cruel, but with people like you guys out there doing great in the communities and making somebody's life that much better and making them smile, even if it's for 5 minutes, is just amazing.
yeah. At Dublin Comic Con, I had the absolute pleasure of meeting Maurice LaMarche. He was the voice behind Egon Spengler and the real Ghostbusters. So I'd queued up to meet him, fully suited and booted, of course, because Ghostbusters Ireland was attending, and I was getting a figure signed. And he saw me, he smiled, he got out from behind the desk, and he came out, put one hand on my shoulder, and shook my hand with his other hand. And he's like, "Thank you for everything you guys do for all the different charities." And he said it to me as Egon Spengler from the real Ghostbusters, And I was like, "Thank you, Dr. Spengler, that means so much to me." And it's something I will never forget. That was a total fanboy moment for me, so that's the only thing I can compare it to that those kids must experience when they meet us. And
Yeah,
I'll never forget that. And it was so nice to actually get to meet one of the Egons that I grew up with. Maurice LaMarche was Egon, and he's a very talented voice actor. I told him my children love Transformer Rescue Bots, and he does the voice of the police chief in it. And as I was going, he said to me, he goes, in the police chief's voice, he goes, "Tell your children the chief says, I hope they're well." And it's brilliant. You have no reason to do that at all, but you could just be sitting there signing next. But no, he was taking time with everybody, and that's the way we are with anybody that comes to speak to us at the stand at any of these cons. We take time for them, and okay, sometimes it causes a bottleneck at these cons, people just crowding around us, but anybody that wants to come and talk Ghostbusters with us, we will always make time for them. Because we wouldn't exist, if it wasn't for people come to see us at cons and things like that. We wouldn't be doing that. We'd just be walking around as regular cosplayers, So it's always good to take time for people, and yeah, I think that's one of the things. Be kind to everybody. It's one of my mantras in life. Be kind to everybody.
yeah, and I couldn't agree more. Just because you never know whose life you're going to impact in a positive way.
Exactly. Yeah. I just love going to the cons, doing it. Like we stayed at one of the guys' houses. We stayed at Alan's house. He lives in Dublin, and it was brilliant because we were all buzzing just from the day, saying, "Oh, did you see such and such? That was great." And that child had come over to us as well, and we got good photos. And we sat and looked through the photographs we'd had taken because we had a guy with us doing all our photography work, and we all got such a buzz out of it. Just being back together as a group and doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and talking to other
it's good.
franchises that do the same thing you guys do with charities and Comic Cons, it's always pretty much the same around the board. Where you don't just do it because it makes you feel good, even though that is a key aspect of it. But at some point during whatever event you're doing, you're going to impact somebody, whether it be a small child who's not doing so well, or you might meet somebody who's just a total Ghostbusters nerd, and just make their day as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I say to people, I'm living the dream, being a Ghostbuster. You know, if 4-year-old me could see me at a con now, you know, just say, you know, I'm living my childhood dream. It's, and I know the other guys would say the same thing. They're living their childhood dreams. You know, we're a great group of friends. You know, it's beyond a franchise now. We're basically a family. We know everybody's family in the group and all, so it's good that way. And we're living the dream.
Yeah,
That's it. And we're
and
bringing joy to others with it.
that's all you can do, and it's one of those things where if you're passionate about it, it's not, it's not really work, so to speak. You're having fun while you're doing it, and you're making somebody's day.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's great that you guys are doing that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's never a chore.
So
Never a chore.
I'm always curious, jumping kind of back into the movies and the real Ghostbusters and whatnot. But what would you say your favorite piece of equipment is that they have, or are there multiples?
Ooh, you see, as a kid, I always loved the trap because I had the Kenner trap before I had the proton pack. You know, so I was playing Ghostbusters with my friends. You know, I'd have had a belt on with the trap hanging off it. So one person was busting the ghost, and then I had the responsibility of doing the trapping. So the trap, I would say, is my favourite piece of Ghostbusting equipment. I was very lucky to get a Matty trap several years ago, and that is my favourite thing I have, the Matty trap, because it's perfect. You know, the animation of it, how it works, the weight, the feel. The trap is my favourite. What else would I like, or do I like? I'm in the process of building a Geiger at the minute from Ghostbusters 2. It doesn't really get much screen time, but it's a prop you don't really see too much of. So I'm in the process of 3D printing that and designing the electronics based on Arduino to make that work. So, but the trap is really my.
I'm sorry, your audio kind of dropped out there for a second.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. The trap is my favorite. The Matty trap is. I was very lucky to get a Matty trap. So, you know, as a kid, playing Ghostbusters with my friends, you know, I had a trap before I had a proton pack, so one person would have had a proton pack on, busting the ghost, and I had to wheel the trap in and stamped on the pedal to open the trap and gone from there. You know, it's yeah, my favorite. And then I'm printing a Geiger at the minute as well, so hopefully get electronics organized for that very soon and have that finished for
I
my
always
next
thought that
convention.
was an interesting piece of equipment aside of the PKE.
Yeah, it's looking at a different thing. Geiger electron volts. So I think it's looking at a trail that's left behind by spiritual beings of some shape or form. So yeah, I'm going to try and explore that a bit more. And one of the things I'm going to do for the next convention we have is like information cards on the equipment. You know, so printed laminated cards explaining what the equipment is and what each of it's done. You know, a bit like a quick reference guide. You know, if you're to start a new job, you get a guide that says, right, this is what this is for, this is what this is for, with pictures of it. So I'm going to do that for the next con. You know, so maybe if somebody's not a Ghostbusters nerd and they're still interested, they can look at these cards and say, oh right, so this is what it's used for. Because a common misconception we encounter is that proton packs actually suck ghosts up. People say, oh, is that what you suck the ghosts up into? You're like, no, this is like a fishing rod that you use to tether your fish and hold it over your trap, which then stores the ghost. So, you know, wee things like that I think can maybe help people understand, but like maybe trying to make them feel like an idiot at the same time.
Yeah, and for me, it was the original proton pack, and then in the second one, of course, the slime blower. But I always feel like the
Yes,
car, the Ecto, was its own character.
very much so, and we really see that with Afterlife. We had the Hasbro Pulse Ecto one that released, and the Lego Afterlife Ecto that came out before the film. And I remember thinking, this is just the car. Why are they releasing these? But the car itself in that film is very much its own character, and like we can really see that, you know, even in the first film, how the car was before Ray done all the work to it. You know, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of work, you know, for a wreck basically. Um, but hey, she is beautiful. People say to me, you know, what movie car would I have? You know, being from Northern Ireland, I have to say a DeLorean, of course, but the Ecto One
Yeah,
is hard to beat.
exactly. And when you look back on just the classic cars, you know, you ultimately will think of, you know, the Ecto One. You'll think of the DeLorean Time Machine. Those are really the ones that stand out for me. I know there's a whole bunch more, but as far as iconic cars that were a character in the movie that they were in, those are the two that I think of the most.
Yeah, definitely. The bit from the original Ghostbusters where you see the Ecto coming down Central Park West towards Dana's building, you know, you very much, you know, that for me is I look at that and go, yeah, that's iconic. And as the car rolls up, you know, it's brilliant. And even before that, whenever they go to the Sedgwick, the call's coming in, and Janine says, "Oh yeah, they'll be totally discreet," and then the doors open to the firehouse, and out comes this bright white ambulance with the blue lights, the roof rack, the siren, and as it pulls up at the Sedgwick, I only noticed this recently. There's a person about to cross the road, and he nearly gets run down, and he jumps back from the curb. There is absolutely nothing discreet about that at all. You know, the siren, the lights.
I've never noticed
It's,
that.
yeah, the comedy behind that. I know, it's crazy. And I noticed as well when the Ghostbusters are walking into the fire or into the Sedgwick, it says Gotham Travel across the road. So I don't know. No, it wouldn't have been anything to do with Batman because the Batman film wasn't made until '89. So that's
Yeah,
I
but
don't
it's,
think.
you know, and you're right. It's the small details, especially if you're just watching the movie to enjoy it. You don't really see that kind of small detail, even though it's there.
Yeah, exactly. It works on so many levels. It's a bit like Peter's Laundry. Many
Exactly.
subtle levels. Yeah.
So I'm curious, and I've asked everybody that I've talked to this as well. You know, of course, in the first one you had Gozer, and then of course, you know, they didn't defeat her; she just kind of disappeared or went back to her dimension. But what
Yeah.
did you think of Vigo?
I liked Vigo. Now, my brother, he does a lot of support work with Ghostbusters Ireland, like our photography and stuff like that. He says it was lazy writing in Ghostbusters 2, but I disagree. You know, this is quite obviously, he was some sort of sorcerer. He was perhaps a demon, and not really a sorcerer. He was a demon, maybe taking human form. And you could bring in Harry Potter here and say that painting is possibly a Horcrux of Vigo. It's part of his soul, part of his spiritual being. You know, how many other paintings of Vigo are there around the world that could possibly come back to life, like Vigo did in Manhattan in '89? I thought it was very good, and it was a sound plot. You know, looking for the body of a child to possess and basically grow up and take over the world. I thought it was a good story, and the mood slime as well. I mean, the mood slime was definitely providing fuel to Vigo, I think. I mean, the mood slime and Vigo are two separate things. You know, the mood slime existed in New York because New York was just such an angry place then and full of hatred and misery. And basically, as Winston said, all the bad vibes are turning into this sludge. And it just so happened then that Vigo was able to capitalize on this and draw strength from it. So maybe if he had stayed in storage, the mood slime wouldn't have started building like that, and he would have been able to capitalize on it. You know, maybe it was just a bit of a perfect storm with all the hatred and anger and violence. It helped Vigo reanimate then in
Yeah,
1989.
and I didn't think it was a bad movie. I just thought it was a continuation, and you introduced somebody
Yeah,
who seemed to be a lot stronger than Gozer was in the '84 version. And
yeah, because like he was able to turn Janosch into the ghost
yeah,
nanny.
yeah, and that was really cool. How he could do that, and then to see everything transpire throughout the entire movie, and then culminate into that big fight scene where of course you got Peter, who's the sarcastic, push your buttons kind of guy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
I've heard conflicting opinion on this, but when it comes down to Afterlife, I thought them bringing back Gozer was brilliant in the fact that one, it closes the chapter on that particular villain, but I think it also closes the chapter for the original Ghostbusters because that was the original.
Yeah. I would agree with you. Like, when I saw the film, I felt like there was a chapter of my life was finished there. That was the film I'd been waiting on. I mean, Gozer was never destroyed. Gozer took the form of Stay Puft. Choose the form of the Destructor. Choose the form you want me to be in while I'm destroying you. That was Gozer. So Gozer's PK energy was dissipated through our plane. Whether or not she made it back to her own dimension, she must have over those years, and that's when she was able to then try to return through the Shandorian mine at Somerville. I thought that was a good plot. I really did like that, and Egon was aware of this, and maybe he didn't go about it the right way, talking about a psychic tornado or pressure cooker ready to explode. But yeah, I think, the original Ghostbusters coming back, finishing off the chapter of Gozer's good. Now, of course, there is the cutscene after the credits of the film, where we see the Ecto getting driven back into the firehouse. Now, something I picked up on was Winston said to Janine that he started his business with only one employee. And that one employee, I would like to think, is none other than Lewis Tully. So, are we going to see Winston trying to relaunch Ghostbusters in the firehouse? Why else would he bring the Ecto back and want to fix her up? And then, of course, it panned down into the basement where we saw the warning light lit on the containment unit. So what problems are they going to face if they go back into that firehouse again? And will we see a return of Lewis?
Yeah, because he was an integral part.
So he was, yeah. Because like one time he turned into a dog and the Ghostbusters helped him. What a great court defense. And like he was the fifth Ghostbuster at one point. He turned up at the museum on New Year's Eve and he felt he was helping. I love that.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I was kind of shocked that they didn't even have him in any kind of post-credit scenes.
I know. It all comes down really to Rick Moranis and retiring from acting when his wife passed away, so he could basically be a dad to his kids. And a lot of people were giving off about that, but I have to respect the guy for that. Too many people would have just kept.
Yeah, and that was awesome that he's done that. I know he's trying to make a comeback.
Yeah, I reckon he'll have a very big following. A lot of people would love to see him out again.
Just because he, and especially the second one, I think his banter between Ray and Egon was great, and then of course him and Peter going back and forth was another. And
yeah,
you don't see that much, where your characters tend to feed off each other, and it's almost like they've known each other for forever, which of course most of them did, but it's great.
Yeah, they had a good on-screen chemistry that wasn't forced.
Exactly, and you can't replicate that.
Yeah. Oh no, the whole courtroom scene. Egon says, "Very good, Lewis. Short but pointless." It's. See, Ghostbusters 2 is so underrated. There is so much good writing in there. And like he steps up whenever the judge says about, help me, the Scoleri brothers. He steps up about saying, I'm their attorney. That's me. My guys could be exposing themselves. And of course, Peter steps in. You don't want us exposing ourselves. They work so well together.
Yeah. and that's
I remember being jealous of Lewis as a kid because I remember seeing a promotional photo for Ghostbusters 2, and it's the three Ghostbusters and the judge and Lewis looking around the corner in the courthouse, and Ray's like, wow, Egon's shocked, Peter's indifferent, and Lewis just has a look of amazement on his face at seeing these ghosts. And I remember thinking as a kid, God, I'd love to be Lewis in there with the Ghostbusters, just watching them do the bust. And then, of course, after they capture the Scolari brothers, the Ghostbusters come out holding their particle throwers. And who's holding the trap? Lewis. He holds the trap up for the people to see. It's
yeah,
yeah,
it is, yeah, and
underrated
that you're
character.
right. That
Yeah.
movie is very underrated. That is my wife's favorite movie, and it's one of those things
Wow.
where no matter what you do, you're always going to have that group of people that will say that movie was horrible. But you got to form your own opinion.
Yeah. That's it. Everybody's different. If we're all the same,
Exactly, exactly. So, I think that the Ghostbusters franchise is here to stay. I hope they make at least one more, and I
yeah.
know that Jason has said there's going to be at least one more.
Yes, he has. He's already talking about ideas for it. I, for one, cannot wait. I think it'll be amazing to see.
And the thing for me, since we lost Ivan Reitman, is how is he going to include a tribute to him in there? And I would imagine that there will be, but it makes you wonder if is he going to end up being a ghost, or is he going to be like Egon was and kind of help? It was.
Yeah, or little Easter eggs from his other
Yeah, and it
films
was
he had done
very
with him.
shocking and sad to see that happened.
Yeah, that was not nice news to wake up to that day. One of our other members, Damien, messaged and said, "Well, this is a bit of a bad one. I'm just cleaning this up. So this podcast is not going to be classed as explicit. That this is a real shocker. This is a really bad way to start a Monday. And honestly, I felt like I was grieving for the loss of a friend. If it wasn't for Ivan Reitman, we wouldn't have Ghostbusters. We wouldn't have all our franchises around the world. We wouldn't have these friendships and these relationships with so many other people. And the love for this film all comes from that one man and the vision.
Yeah, I talked to the Alberta Ghostbusters after it happened, and one of the members that I talked to, he said that he had met Ivan because a couple of their members actually worked on the movie, and they did some practical effects. They worked on the gunner seat for the Ecto and a few other things, but he said that even though it was a brief period where he actually met him and kind of talked to him a bit, you're right, it hit home. And he was so talented. And of course, now that lives off, it lives on in Jason.
Yeah. I'm just glad that Ivan got to see how good and how popular
Yeah.
was.
And,
because I don't think we would have had Afterlife if Ivan had passed a few years
exactly.
previous. I don't think we would have had Afterlife.
And, I didn't know this until a few months back that he was one of the founding members of Ghost Corps.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and I totally love that. We have our Ghost Corps pins that we all wear in our flight suits. It's a nice little link, and of course, then they've released the Reitman badges, just like the Spengler badges. So I've ordered a batch of those for Ghostbusters Ireland, so we pass them out to the guys once they arrive. But it's a nice little memorial to have, just to remember and honor the man.
Yeah, and Jason has a lot of Ivan's personality, and his, I think his ideas were in line with what Ivan's were for the original. And I think that, of course, he's successful in his own right, but I think now having a successful Ghostbusters movie just like his dad, I think he's locked in with that.
Yeah. we know the style the film's going to be, and it works.
Yes,
It works
exactly. So, I know you guys are on social media. Where can our listeners find you, and
yes.
how do they find you?
So, if you go on to Google and just type in the Irish Ghostbusters or Ghostbusters Ireland, you will see our Facebook page and our Instagram page. So the logo comes up and it is our patch, which is of course, the Moogly that we all know, and Ireland, the island of Ireland behind him, and Ireland is written in the three colours of green, white and gold in behind him. So click onto that, you'll see a nice animation at the top around a graveyard for our Facebook page that was made for us. You'll scroll down, you'll see our information about Heart Children Ireland, who we're partnered with, and then you'll start seeing our Saturday videos that we're putting out, photos from Comic Con and things like that. Instagram, Ghostbusters Ireland, you'll find us there, and also on Twitter as the...
Excellent. Do you guys have a website?
We haven't developed a website yet. I did buy the web space for it, but at the minute everything's just going through really our Facebook and Instagram, because they're sort of pre-made content platforms that we're happy to use.
I'm always curious when it comes down to social media. I know you touched on your Facebook Lives and things of that nature. How has that made the Ghostbusters Ireland grow, and how many people do you think you've reached since you guys have been on those platforms?
I would put a conservative estimate in the last 2 years, 100,000. In the week after Comic Con, we had 10,000 interactions on our Facebook page alone. You get the lovely metrics every week from it. I love looking at the stats and the metrics behind it. It was able to show us that we had 10,000 interactions on our Facebook page. Social media is great because it's a platform that you can basically reach the whole world on. I mean, many businesses are using it to grow their business, and we're just using it to grow our love of Ghostbusters and hopefully grow other people's love of Ghostbusters as well. I mean, before social media, like, franchises would have been small groups, I imagine, of just real sort of enthusiasts who maybe know each other from days gone by and things like that. We wouldn't have had conventions the same way we did. You know, we would have had the likes of the big ones, New York Comic Con or San Diego Comic Con, but nothing on the level that they are now. And I think social media really helps grow that, because behind every con, there's a social media page as well. I mean, Ghostbusters Ireland, like, our social media, that's how we keep in contact with everybody, and people can message us directly that way. The internet has made the world.
Exactly. I think social media, especially in this day and age, is very key to growing anything you're trying to do, whether it be a business or just a charity group, you know.
Yeah. Totally.
Well, listen, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to chat with me for a bit. I know there's a big time difference between me and where you are, but I appreciate you taking time out, man. Mm-hmm. It's been a blast.
Yeah, it really has. Thank you so much for having me on. And I always sign off our Ghostbusters Ireland videos with on the other side.
Excellent. Well, I hope you have a good rest of the day, and I definitely will reach out when this is set to premiere, because it's going to be our season finale. So I was glad to have you on for it.
Fantastic. And we'll share it. Yeah, we'll share it on our social media platforms as well, Joshua, so that we get it out.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate it a lot.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you very much.
I'm on my way, I'm making it. I got to make it sure.